The opinions expressed here do not necessarily reflect those of our sponsors.
Blu Wolf Podcast.
This episode of the Blu Wolf Podcast is brought to you by Blue Line Professional Inspections. Check out blinspections.net for all your inspection needs, including home inspection, wood-destroying insect inspection, sewer drain inspection, and on-site water treatment inspection. Blue Line is a first responder-owned business.
Hey everyone, this is Willie Cantu with the Blu Wolf Podcast. I needed to get this out because this incident happened just yesterday. But it got me to thinking after watching the news and the chief during his interview detailing the situation as he's being asked questions by the news reporters. You gotta listen to it. I don't know why they do this, but they start out the video of them putting the chief in place where they're gonna film him, them micing him up. You can hear the side conversations before it even begins. Then they ask him questions, and the chief has got a mic on, but the reporters that are asking the questions don't. And you can barely hear them. As you'll see in the video here.
I don't, but he didn't need one.
I mean, did he do the right thing?
Look, he was trying to recover his property. I guess it would depend on who you asked whether he did the right thing or not.
What is your recommendation for anyone who's had a stolen vehicle, they track down the vehicle? Did this owner of the vehicle have the right sequence of actions here, tracking down their own vehicle and confronting the person?
The owner of a stolen vehicle certainly has the right to track down their vehicle. Now, we would prefer that call the police before taking that into your own hands, but he did what he felt he needed to do, and we have one dead.
It's hard to hear the questions that the reporters are asking him. All you hear is clearly are his answers. But anyway, the situation happened yesterday at South Park Mall in San Antonio, Texas, on the south side of town, where a owner of a vehicle, I believe it was a Ford pickup truck, I don't know what model, had his vehicle stolen, and I don't know when, but he located the vehicle somehow, maybe through electronics or GPS. He located it on the south side of town in the South Park Mall parking lot. So he goes himself, mind you, and I'd say this, there's people sometimes that will take matters into their own hands because they're believing that the police don't care or they're not moving fast enough. Hey, I don't have a problem with that. I've made situations where the owners have said, hey, I found these people and called us in and we've located and recovered their property. I'm okay with that. In this situation, the vehicle's owner locates his vehicle, his truck, with a male and a female suspect inside. So the owner of the vehicle has a weapon, a firearm. I'm pretty sure it was a handgun. And he confronts the suspects in the vehicle at gunpoint. According to the chief, he orders them out of his vehicle, tells them to sit down on the curb there by his vehicle until the police arrive. Now, we know that most citizens don't carry handcuffs or restraints, zip ties, or it's very hard to tie someone up, as the movies often show, by yourself with a handgun trained on someone you might have to shoot. So he has them at gunpoint. They've complied so far. Well, during that time, I'm sure the suspect saw his opportunity, his window of opportunity, to draw his weapon that he had somewhere on his body. And he shot the owner of the vehicle and hit him. And the owner of the vehicle shot back, shot the male suspect, killed him, and hit the female suspect. And I hear she's in pretty bad shape. I don't think the owner of the vehicle's injuries are life-threatening, but they're not good. The chief, when you watch him, you'll see him just comfortable as heck, just answering the questions. But the thing that I see is he doesn't answer them as a person that has the knowledge that he's supposed to have, that has the years of police experience that he's supposed to have. He's, mind you, he's the San Antonio Police Department Chief of Police, who's got over 30 years of police experience, not just in San Antonio, but other places. He is the top cop, okay? He is the boss of every other police officer below him. And he sounds like he doesn't know what the hell to say. And that should be concerning to people. This is not the first time. This is not the only time. We have a chief of police that can't explain active, tactical situations. Because mind you, when you have to use force that might cause injury and or death, you have to explain those things. There's a report, and obviously there's an investigation, and then, as you know now, there may be charges being brought up on the police officers, which has been happening more and more often nowadays. So you'll hear the first reporter, just in the clip that I selected from the Express News, ask him, number one, did the guy have a permit to possess the weapon, the owner of the vehicle? He says he doesn't know, but he didn't need one because we have constitutional carry in Texas. And he's right, he doesn't need one. But we don't know if this dude's a felon or not. We don't know if he wasn't supposed to be in possession of a weapon, of a firearm. So, but that doesn't matter, because it doesn't matter to the chief, really. Because it sounds like, he's the owner, these people stole, good guy versus bad guy kills bad guy. But the chief is asked if he thought the guy did right, the owner of the vehicle did right. Meaning were his decisions to track down his vehicle, number one, to confront the suspects with a handgun, number two, and obviously end up in a shooting. And the chief said, well, he's within his right to track down his vehicle and within his right to possess a weapon. And it depends on who you ask as to his actions after that. Right away, I'm like, dude, he's asking you. I don't think he's going around asking just anybody off the street. He's asking the top cop for his professional opinion if this private citizen took the right actions that ended up in a shooting and could have cost him his life. And the chief either purposely did that or ignorantly did that. I want to go with the latter, because I don't think he thought fast enough to say that. Then the next reporter, in a different way, asked the chief if he thought the actions of the vehicle owner, the sequence of them, were valid or legitimate. And the chief says, well, obviously he's within his right to track down his vehicle. It's within his right to possess a weapon. But when he confronts the suspects, I think what he's alluding to, and he says, doesn't say this in these exact words, but he wishes that the owner of the vehicle would have called the police when he located the suspects. Well, based on my experience of locating suspects in stolen vehicles and other suspects involved in criminality, possession of narcotics or drugs, sitting in a vehicle and being assessed and critiqued on our actions to get them and apprehend them from that vehicle, there's a lot of history there with the administration and our actions doing that. But my question to the chief would be, to call the police to do what? And the reason I ask that is because there's been a lot of times that we've done certain things, taken certain actions, tactical actions that we thought were going to be the safest for us and the safest for the suspect and had the highest propensity for success to apprehend them without any kind of excessive force or higher force used. And it worked. And we apprehended the suspect. And might have hurt them, we might have killed them. But none of us got hurt, and we got the property. And I'm not saying to leave it at that, because we always critique ourselves and try to do better. Every time, regardless if you do this a million times, you always critique your actions and try to do better. But obviously through body cam and through Coban video, in dash cams, when the administration and the chief sees these things, lots of times they're going to tell us, especially when it involves a vehicle, don't do that anymore. And it took a while for me to have this epiphany, because I got tired of hearing, hey, don't do that anymore. So they were taking away our tactics, but yet still wanted us to do the job and fulfill the obligations that we're required to do. They always tell us what not to do, but they never tell us what we can do. And that's something else I'd like to hear. And I've said this to administration. In y'all's infinite wisdom, you keep telling us what not to do. How about one day tell us what not to do and then give us another way? And that never happens. Mind you, when it comes to vehicles, a lot of the administration, to include the chief, think that these felony car stop tactics work. And if you're a police officer, you know what I'm talking about. I've done them before. They have their place. But they're not the end-all tactic that you use for suspects in vehicles. So the chief is okay with how the owner of the vehicle contacted the suspects and had him at gunpoint. And it's okay that the guy drew a weapon, shot the vehicle owner, and that the vehicle owner had to shoot and kill him and injure the female. Now, I'm not worried about the suspect. That's one less car thief in San Antonio. They're like shark teeth. One falls out, another one pops up. There's thousands of more in San Antonio. So I don't care. He fucked around and he found out. But when you hear the police chief describe the actions of a San Antonio police officer doing similar actions to this vehicle owner, where they have called the police or the officer has located pretty much the same situation and took action, whether it was right or wrong. Now, here's one thing too, tactical decisions and actions that officers take, they're all risky. When they work out, hey, good job, good choice. But when they don't, you could have done better. You should have done this. What were you thinking? I get it. I mean, we're always trying to do things right. But there's no one tactic to one situation that's going to work 100% of the time. But there are tactics that have a higher percentage of success consistently, but not 100% of the time. One of the actions referring to a situation like this is when San Antonio police officer James Brennan, back in October, shot a 17-year-old, I call him a suspect, in a vehicle that he thought was in a stolen vehicle, whom he confronted in full uniform, who tried to drive off, struck the officer with the door, and evade the police in a vehicle, which is a felony. Now, mind you, what caught this officer's attention was that this was the same vehicle that fled from him the night before. Good job by the officer. Good eye by locating him again. But there's lots of criticism, and it happened that after that shooting because it made the news. Now, mind you, our news is they're not going to be on our side. Hardly ever been on our side. But the chief got on it. There was public backlash. This officer just totally screwed the pooch. He just made the wrong decisions. He should have called for cover. He shouldn't have done this. He shouldn't have done that. He shot this poor kid. The chief fired the officer, mind you. Because number one, the kid, I call him the kid, the young officer, was a 7-month probationary officer. The chief could fire him for anything within that first year of his employment with us. So it was easy for the chief to do. Let him go. Shows the public, hey, this guy's a bad officer. Let's just kick him loose. That one situation, I guess, just revealed that, well, the chief won't say this, that his applicant processing made a mistake. They chose the wrong guy. They should have known during that several month-long application process that this guy was going to make this kind of stupid decision and bring bad light on the police department. He just washes his hands of this guy. And of course, our liberal Soros-bought DA is going to charge the police officer, which he did, with ag assault by a public servant. Of course, the chief sits there and says all these disparaging things about this officer and how bad he did, which in turn says this is a bad officer. And this kid's not even dead. The kid was 17 at the time. But number one, this officer, who was a military veteran, mind you, had a good eye for criminality. And it doesn't say, well, he found him the night before. The license plate on that vehicle did not match the vehicle make and model. So that's why he believed that it was stolen. He goes to pull it over. Now, mind you, it didn't pop up when he ran the license plate as stolen. So a traffic stop on it could mean that there was a clerical error or this idiot put the wrong plates on there because he's too cheap to pay for registration. That's happened before. But the kid flees from him in the vehicle that night. And the girl that was with him the night he got shot was in the vehicle the night before. And through interviews, she said that she was afraid to get in the car with him that night too. So how was this guy a bad officer when he's doing the job that you hired him for? In fact, he's doing more of a job than a lot of other officers, to include tenured officers, by looking for criminality. He's being proactive. He's trying to find criminals before they commit a crime. But then he makes some bad decisions or poor decisions, which causes this shooting. And because of the public outcry, the chief just rids the department of it. This kid could have been good, and it's definitely a learning experience. That kind of experience gives you a whole nother academy. But let's just rid the department of him, and let's get some worthless people that fit our affirmative action needs. But the hypocrisy of the chief, seemingly praising the actions of this private citizen, owner of the vehicle, that resulted in the death of another citizen, a suspect, it just kind of goes that, hey, it's a story and he has nothing else to do with it. And I get it. The guy's not an employee of his. But the way he explains the actions, they should be explained the same way with a police officer, with a lot more knowledge too. So one thing I need to say, not to insult anybody's intelligence, but it's nearly never said, and the chief definitely doesn't say it, nor does his administrators. This is something that they should know, because every police officer should know this. And for those of you private citizens, look it up. And any type of actions that the police take that involve force, more than our presence and verbal, where it causes us to have to lay hands on people, obviously strike people, shoot people. One major Supreme Court case that was in our favor, that protects us to this day, is Graham versus O'Connor. It talks about reasonableness, and it talks about hindsight being 20/20. Hindsight of anybody that views the actions or assesses the actions of a police officer. They're 20/20. They're making decisions on what the officer should have done, could have done after the fact, when the officer made those decisions in usually fractions of a second. It also deals with what the officer believed in his mind at the time, based on the totality of the circumstances. That's extremely important. And lately, the chief appears that he doesn't know a damn thing about that case, because he just rids the department of these officers who, in his mind, makes bad decisions in tactical situations. Then he tries to say their actions don't represent the department's extensive and advanced training. My question to that is, what does it represent? And I believe it does represent your kinder, gentler, hug-a-thug training.